our lovely, remote, very strategic location, our underground bunker, if you will. We're ready to bring you another Chip Talks. And today we're going to talk about bioresonance, which should be fun and interesting. So, bioresonance is an interesting technology that we'll get into. If you go find or go look for information about bioresonance, you're not going to find a lot of information. You're going to find a lot of practitioners who talk about it, but you're not going to find a lot of information about the underlying science or how it works or why it works or, kind of what it's doing, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today a little bit. So we're going to talk about that underlying science, but I'll tell you, this is one I look at a lot of different things, right? So in what I do and kind of how I pursue my science, I end up in a lot of different areas of scientific study. And this area of scientific study, occulted would probably be the proper word. It is just amazingly obscured. It's very difficult to get to the underpinnings of this technology. And we'll talk, some about that as we sort of walk through this and why, or I'll give you my opinions on why. But this is stuff they don't want you to know about. Let's just put it that way, and I think that'll become obvious as we sort of walk through this presentation. So we'll talk about bioresonance today, and I don't have many slides, so this may not be a real long Chip Talks, or it may end up being super long. I'm not sure how this one is going to go this morning. Well, the first thing that I want to talk to you guys about is this is something you cannot talk about. I mean, it is Fight Club. This whole issue of really frequency, light, how that affects you, quantum mechanics, torsion field, sort of manipulation, what Royal Rife did, what, Tesla did as it applies here. You don't talk about this stuff, and if you do, you get kicked off of platforms where you can talk about things. So this is my experience. This is LinkedIn. I don't know what my LinkedIn profile looks like right now if you go to it, but I'm temporarily banned from LinkedIn. But one of the reasons, and you can see that on the sort of their output to me, and it was three things it looks like, but one of the main things was this deal I posted about Royal Rife. And I'll read you this. Ha ha ha, LinkedIn. Again, good luck, stopping me. I'll find a way. But I'll just read you this, what I posted on LinkedIn. So this is like factual information. So I don't know how LinkedIn can, sort of silence factual information, but I'll just read it to you. So Dr. Milbank Johnson, professor of physiology and clinical medicine at the University of Southern California, gathered in 1934 a research committee to test the clinical efficacy of Rife's cancer therapy. 16 terminally ill patients with different types of malignancies were selected and treated with the instrument that produced an oscillating electric field of the required frequency for deactivating the BX entities. The BX entities are cancer, and Rife absolutely and 1000% identified these entities as cancer with his very leading edge microscope and was able to kill these guys with frequency. And that's why this is so occulted. Again, if you can do this through frequency and not through oncology, they don't want you to know that. That threatens $100 billion a year industry. Okay? The sessions lasted only 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Every third day. Wow. 3 minutes every 3 days? 6 minutes a week to cure my cancer? I think I can find time for that, don't you? The patients felt neither pain nor any other sensation. And again, we have one of these machines here that we will begin to talk about. We can't, again, I don't want to get banned from life here. Like the way we get banned, and again, God isn't going to ban me from life. But I firmly believe that. So I might get banned from their platform, but I'm not going to get banned from being able to talk to you. Okay, so the sessions lasted for only 3 minutes every third day. Yeah, not very long, huh? The patients felt neither pain nor any other sensation, but the virus or bacteria is destroyed and the body then recovers itself. No pain, no surgery, no chemo, no radiation, just 3 minutes for 3 days, or every third day. Okay. The interval between treatments was needed to eliminate the toxic debris. As this stuff dies, your body has great ways of cleaning it up. Your body always wants to heal itself, right? So it's, what is this stuff? It's a bacteria. After 3 months, 3 minutes every third day, the interval after 3 months, 14 of these hopeless cases were signed off as clinically cured by the staff of 5 medical doctors. 5 medical doctors, 14 out of 16. But other ones participating in overviewing the test and the pathology of the group, Dr. Ford certified the healing. They certified it. The 2 other patients, there were 16 going in, 14 were completely cured. What happened to the other 2? The 2 other patients were cured after 20 more days. Okay. Please notice that all the patients were cured. That I wouldn't post about that on LinkedIn, by the way. That'll get you kicked off. But this is the technology that we're talking about. So bioresonance does have healing aspects, let's say, but it's mainly the evaluation side of this. So it's how do you use sort of what Rife was onto and these frequency technologies, these quantum technologies, to be able to evaluate your health. This is a gentleman named Dr. Anthony Holland. Again, so he is going to talk to you a little bit about Rife. We're going to listen to about 2 minutes of his TEDx talk. Like me, Dr. Anthony Holland's TEDx talk will never be on Big TED because they banned it. Now, why would they ban it? For the same reason that they ban you posting about Rife on LinkedIn. They don't want you to talk about this. They don't want you to, who's they? Well, who pays for all this? It's, you could do your own homework there. But again, this is very threatening to some very, very large industries like pharma. So we're going to go to about a minute into this and I'll kind of let you guys listen to this. And I think this is, again, this is another kind of this guy's letter. I'm not, but this is another guy like me that's stepping outside of his field and he's seeing some things that are amazing and he's, trying to tell you about it and he's silenced, right? So let's listen.
Children would not have to suffer from cancer or from the terrible side effects of toxic drugs or radiation because we believed there just had to be a better way. There had to be a better way, and we think we may have found it. The scientist said, "You're killing more cancer cells than as if you had used radiation." That same scientist went on, "If you had spent millions of dollars developing a new drug that killed this many cancer cells, it would be a home run." This was an astonishing thing to hear, especially for a music professor who had just completed his first experiments in a cancer lab. But we didn't use any radiation. We didn't use any drugs. So what did we do? I have here 2 identical tuning forks, both tuned to the note A, the note an orchestra tunes to. These forks are both made to vibrate 440 times per second. We say their frequency is 440 hertz. If I tap this fork, putting little pulses of energy into it, the second fork will also vibrate in sympathy. And if I silence this fork, we just may hear the other singing its tone. We say that I'm inducing a sympathetic resonant vibration in the second fork. It only works because both forks are tuned to the exact same frequency.
Okay, I'll stop it there. But this is a great TED Talk, and again, you guys can go find this. Just look up Dr. Anthony Holland TEDx, and you'll find his talk. He talks a lot about, again, inducing sympathetic resonant frequency to be able to affect cells and to be able to use that same principle to kill cancer cells and things like that. So this is exactly what Royal Rife was onto back in the day. And, you know, again, this is, you don't talk about Fight Club, you know, so you talk about Fight Club, you're not going to get the big TED. You talk about Fight Club, you're going to get banned from LinkedIn. Why is that? Well, it's, again, there's some really, really important and cool stuff here. So this is, if you look at kind of the underpinnings of the science, so what's going on here, what's actually being studied, it's something called torsion field science. This is from Wikipedia, so I want to read this to you again. This to me is just another indication of that this is pretty valid stuff. If Wikipedia is trying to tell you to look over here and these are not the droids you seek kind of stuff, usually that's a pretty good indication that perhaps it's something that might enjoy a deeper purview or a deeper dive, let's say. Okay, so what's a torsion field? Well, a torsion field, also called an axon field, a spin field, a spinner field, or a microlepton field, big words, is a feature of pseudo-scientific, so there you go, it can't be proper science, proposals that the quantum spin of particles can be used to cause emanations to carry information through vacuum orders of magnitude faster than the speed of light. So again, this is indicating that there might be science under or around quantum field theory where you can use quantum mechanics and quantum field theory to do things. And it turns out that that is true, and it's very easy to manipulate basically these torsion fields. You do it magnetically, or you can do it with electromagnets. So again, this is something that, you know, if you have the ability to build something at home that can, let's say, greatly enhance your function, that's something that they don't want you to know about, because again, they want to control this technology. They want to roll it out to you. They don't want you to be too smart, and you know, they want to be in control of it. They want to sell it to you, right? So they don't want you to know this stuff. Whoever they are, you figure that out on your own. Despite the several obvious contradictions in established physics, along with associated statements by believers criticized as being nonsensical by reputable scientists, torsion fields have been embraced as an explanation for claims of homeopathic cures, telepathy, telekinesis, levitation, clairvoyance, ESP, and other paranormal phenomenon. Dogs and cats will fall from the sky. Yeah, but again, there's claims of all that happening. I completely agree with that. I don't think that they're nonsensical. So the Russians have been studying this for a bit, and I think I've got a slide on that we'll talk about, but this may go in a lot of different directions. I'm just sort of going with it this morning. The harnessing of torsion fields has been claimed to make everything possible, from miracle cure devices, including devices that cure alcohol addiction, to working perpetual motion machines, stargates, UFO propulsion analogs, and weapons of mass destruction. Some such devices, in particular the miracle cure boxes, have been patented, manufactured, and sold. Okay. Well, there's what Wikipedia thinks about the science. And again, this stuff is obscured. And why? I think because it's Russian, mainly. This is a Russian technology. It's been developed by Russian scientists in Russia, if you go in and sort of go to the doctor, they're going to hook you up to one of these devices, a torsion field device, before they ask you what's wrong with you, because it doesn't really matter what you say is wrong with you. They're going to evaluate you with one of these devices. And again, here's the background, okay? So the commercialization of nonlinear diagnostic medical devices, and that's, if you want to go look for research and stuff on these, this is a good way to start. Nonlinear diagnostic medical device systems, so NLSs they call them, for the healthcare industry began in Russia in the late 1980s, when Russia was still the USSR. But its origins date back to Russian state-sponsored scientific military research into the nature of biological radiation in the early 1900s. So I would encourage you to look into biological radiation. The Russians have done a lot more with, let's say, kind of mind over body stuff, telekinesis, psychic kind of stuff, than we publicly have done here, let's say, in the United States. A lot of that work that the Russians did is, available, so under this moniker of biological radiation. But they began to understand that there was, let's say, fields of influence that were manipulatable, that we could manipulate with our minds in certain instances, or receive information from with our minds in certain instances. But certainly these things could be manipulated with electromagnetics and magnets and some of the things that they were playing around with at the time. Oh wow, this next paragraph looks butchered. I'm not sure if that's the right name of the gent, but again, you can just look up this information and you can find this guy. But he was a nuclear physicist for the Russian military, and he is considered the inventor of this NLS technology. And again, it's based on quantum physics, so it's not like it's crank science by any means. It has to do with spin, and spin is a notion of quantum mechanics. You can look at gluons and quarks if you want to learn more about that. The Russians would later refer to spin-generated quantum fields as torsion fields. So in the theory, again, in quantum science, I'll just run you through this real quick, is that you have quarks that are associated with a proton. So if you think, what is a proton? Well, I think a proton is 2 up and 1 down quark. And those quarks have spin, and those quarks are held together by something called a gluon. So this whole thing has, let's say, a magnetic moment associated with spin that is a positive half integer. That can be manipulated, and this is what the Russians found. So can I turn that guy into a neutron? Well, if I can turn the quarks into 2 down, 1 up, then now I've got a neutron, okay? And so they were manipulating all of this. And if you can turn a proton into a neutron, I don't know what kind of energy that gives off, or really even, what would happen if you do that. But it looks like that's what they've been able to do. And they've been able to manipulate this spin, at least measure this spin, and then, potentially manipulate it back to, let's say, optimal conditions for a while. So the Russians would later refer to spin-generated quantum fields as torsion fields. In the 1970s, and I don't think that's spelled right, but Nestrafov was appointed by the Russian military to lead the research into the new field of physics called psychophysics, which analyzes how torsion fields influence human mental functions. In 1990, following the collapse of the Soviet Union, NLS Medical Technologies was privatized to the Institute of Practical Psychophysics. So this, information was privatized, I guess, in the 90s. This is, you can find these devices, China has sort of ripped off, and that's the device that we use actually is sort of a Chinese device. I'm looking at improving our device right now because I just don't like the reporting that comes off of our device, but it does provide really, really good information. And you can kind of see this graphic is somewhat representative of the, you can look up biophoton fields too, and you'll get kind of the same thing. But it's talking about sort of how these relate to, you can build a template and sort of understand how things are deviated from, let's say, optimal based on this underlying science, which is really, really cool. So in practicality, how does this work? Well, you sit down, you put on some headphones, and I'll show you some pictures here in a second. But the health assessment is accomplished by means of sensors placed on the head, which are capable of interfacing via electromagnetic waves with the subcortical brain, the largest repository of information about the ongoing process within the organism. The information obtained is reformed into a digital signal, which is subsequently decoded by advanced software. This information is displayed on the computer screen over a virtual model of the organ, tissue, or cell being evaluated. And this is a little bit more high level, I guess, of quantum mechanics. And it's not really coming from your brain, it's actually coming from the cells themselves. But I guess it's for marketing, it's easier to say that it's coming from your brain. The display presents organs, and this is marketing stuff from their marketing site, but the display presents the organs' health in a color-coded format, varying from light yellow, healthier, to orange, red, purple, and black, where organ stress is maximal and the health of the organ is highly suspect. So if you get a lot of black on your scan, that's something you need to pay attention to. Recommendations regarding possible pathologies and avenues of potential treatments are given to the physician to explore with traditional medical diagnostic methods. So their software will recommend basically strategies, Western medical strategies, Eastern medical strategies, which is kind of cool. It'll also allopathic and all kinds of stuff, which is kind of neat. So what does it do? Well, it scans the body. So what does that mean? Well, again, it's using these quantum mechanics, the torsion field, to gain information about cellular health. So let's say liver should look a certain way under this science, under this torsion field science. So your liver should have certain quantum characteristics, certain spin characteristics. And if it doesn't, then they're suggesting that this is an indication of disease. So if your liver is off in what's expected, that's an indication of disease. And depending on how off it is as to what's expected, that's an indication of severity of disease. And, they've validated this, obviously, scientifically. The other cool thing about this technology is it can also sense, let's say, external things inside of you, like parasites. So a lot of human disease has to do with bacteria, fungus, virus, parasitic invasion of us, and sort of what those things do as they sort of take root and take hold. This thing can identify what those parasites are, so what that bacteria, virus, it even can identify biofilm, which is pretty cool. And that's somewhat new, so this technology is advanced quite a bit. I think the thing that we use here is early 2010 technology. And it's moved quite a bit since then. But again, biofilms are what cause dental decay, right? So plaque, so we've all heard the word plaque, is a biofilm that develops on your teeth. Well, guess what? You develop those biofilms in other organs in your body. You can develop biofilms in your gut, in your trachea, in your digestive, in your intestines, in your rectum, in your vagina. In all different kinds of places. And so it's very important to be able to identify those biofilms and then, further to be able to break them up. Antibiotics and things like, let's say Western medicine, they're not even there yet, right? So they still think that, all disease is caused by pathogens and, we just need to guard ourselves and disinfect everything. And Eastern medicine really says, no, it's not really, it's kind of about the pathogens and the bugs and the bacteria, yeah, but it's more about your immune system and understanding how our immune systems work and being able to build those up. So this device also gives statistical information of probabilities of what might be wrong. So again, if it's, it has a database that sort of compares and contrasts against things that have been known and seen before, and suggest those as possibilities of what might be wrong with an individual. It definitely identifies bacteria, virus, and fungus, and this is what we use it for mainly here in what I do and sort of the clinic that we have. It's non-medical, but if I'm going to try to help you, let's say with E. coli, that might be a different strategy as far as the supplements and the behavior that I suggest if I'm trying to help you with H. pylori. H. pylori is way more serious, than E. coli. E. coli can be serious, but H. pylori, requires a little bit more immediate kind of action than E. coli would. So again, understanding kind of where these bugs are, how they've got us, and what they're doing is super important to any kind of treatment. And the fact that this isn't in Western medicine yet is just, it's almost criminal. This is better, a way better way. I don't have to stick you, poke you, do any of that. It's not 100% yet, and that's kind of on the next slide. We'll talk about that a little bit, but it's pretty good. And it's good enough to suggest deeper treatment. So like, for instance, let's say you all of a sudden start having trouble walking upstairs, meaning you get out of breath, you start noticing that you don't have the wind you used to have, you get tired a lot easier. Well, those are signs that you've got probably blockage, something's going on in your ability to oxygenate your cells, and it's probably heart related. So we would pick that up very early in like a bioresonance scan. So a bioresonance scan would begin to show indications of that, probably before you even noticed it. And it's something that we could recommend to you. Say, hey, it's looking like, we don't know. This isn't a medical device. It's not 100%. But it's looking like you're having indications of blockage, and you might want to go see your cardiologist and get an EKG, right? And let's make sure that you're okay. And in fact, we just had that happen to a good friend this week. He already knew, but we were able to sort of validate with this bioresonance technology what he already knew. And again, another friend was similarly situated and, suggesting he go see a cardiologist right away. Because those two guys almost looked the same, and one was diagnosed and one wasn't. So anyway, this thing also does a pretty good job of identifying allergies. And this is the thing that I have, right? So it's this technology, I'm sure, has come a long way in 12 years. And it can reverse, basically, so it understands what healthy looks like in this sort of quantum torsion field. It can assess what's going on with you in your quantum torsion field, and then it can try to, using magnetic pulsing, electromagnetic fields, can try to move your situation into what's more perfect. And they've got some research around this. Again, it needs to be studied a lot more, but it's very promising. It takes a little bit more than kind of what Rife saw, the 3 minutes every third day. So this is more of, and it's the mechanism of action is different in kind of what they're doing here than Rife. There's a lot to this, obviously. Okay, so how accurate is this? Let's see, I may have to blow this up just so you guys can see it, but I want you to kind of, and this is just the inventor of the tech, let's say. This is the Russian company that sells it. They do sell these things here in the United States, and you can buy one. They're kind of expensive. I think they're less than $10,000, but they're probably more than $5,000. So what I want you to look at, so you can see the year of release on these things too. So they're really, the latest one that they released is 2018. And you would think this technology's advanced some in the last 5 years. I would expect it to. Frequency generator, that's always kind of interesting. So what are they trying to put in you? So it's quite a bit of frequency there. It's high frequency. So meaning that the magnetic fields that are produced by this would be ample, would be large. Lesser frequency would produce a lesser magnetic field. But you can see that here, and this is their own information. So they're not saying, hey, this is 100%, works all the time. We're always banging on. So accuracy of researches, percent according to anatomical structures, is 85 to 90%. Accuracy of researches, percent of histological models, 80 to 90%. So you can kind of get a genetic and chromosomal models here. So, 85 to 90%. But it's enough to give an indication of, health and wellness and perhaps severity. So, we might not, send you running off to chemo treatment, after looking at this, but we certainly might, tell you need to go see an oncologist like right now. So what does this look like? I mean, practically, what does this look like? This is our situation, our evaluation. Again, I'd like to improve this, but this is, it's kind of good enough. I would say this works well, and about the same statistics that I'm seeing as theirs, does. And this is sort of their technology, but mine is a Chinese knockoff. It is. It's called biophilia, but it's literally a knockoff of their one of these earlier systems, probably this 2015, the Metron system. So anyway, that's kind of what it looks like there on the left. Again, you utilize a laptop computer. It runs some software through a frequency generator, an evaluation system. You wear headphones, so you can see Tim Harms over here on the left wearing his headphones, and he's got this kind of red thing over here in his right hand. But it uses resistivity and some of these torsion field principles that I'll be telling you a lot more about in the future to be able to do its evaluation. So, isn't that cool stuff? Very, very cool stuff. And this is technology where I can evaluate you. Again, it's not 100%, but in a similar way that, let's say, thermal imaging, let's use a breast cancer example. So let's say I wanted to screen a whole bunch of people for breast cancer, and I had a thermal imaging system. And again, thermal imaging, let's say I had AI with it to quickly identify, hey, you might have something going on here. Thermal imaging is super sensitive, right? So you're going to see stuff, cancers when it's just developing, just starting. You're going to see little hot, places, on the breast or in the breast tissue before a mammogram, would ever see it, right? So you're going to get pre-indications of things. And that's, if you're, let's say somebody who reads those images, that freaks you right out. It freaks me right out because, I never want to miss anything. I always want to make sure that, I'm giving people accurate information. But at the same time, I may see something and I tell them, you need to go get a mammogram like now. They'll go get a mammogram and the mammogram still won't see it. So a lot of this stuff is really, really early and predictive, which is great. The things that we're going to be adding soon is tools. So if you look at the tools, I would say the emerging tools that are coming to light right now, thermal imaging is a really good like frontline tool to identify bacterial infection, to identify muscular issues, to identify surface level cancers and neoplasms, things like that. Now, again, it's still not recognized as a medical device to do that, but I'll just tell you as a guy who looks at this every day, it's a great tool, and it should be in the medical system absolutely as a screening device. So again, there's no reason why you go into, let's say, see the doctor and you get thermal image right off, because that's going to give that physician a lot more information about what's going on with you. The second tool that we use is bioresonance. And again, as this technology gets better, so can we get this technology to 95%? Can we get it to 99%? I mean, I don't know. It requires study and research, but damn, 90% is pretty good. And that's a good enough screening technology, right? So again, you're still not making a medical determination about anybody. You're just like, you're saying, oh, that might be wrong with you. We need to, dive in further. The third piece of technology that will ramp up pretty soon is a more medical and direct medical diagnostic device called the PCR. And with this device, we'll be able to screen for different things, but we'll also be able to identify if you're in the middle, of a disease state and kind of how bad it is, right? So if you have cancer, we could identify kind of how bad that cancer is and if it's metastasizing and kind of what's going on as to if it's rapidly growing or slowly growing, things like that. So all of these tools, gosh, is all of what I just said super important, right? So if you look at how will healthcare look in the future, I mean, we're not going to be using needles and the things that we use now to do diagnosis. We're going to be using these type tools. And frankly, these type tools, I could do remotely, right? So I could ship you a few things, have you measure yourself and then send me back that information. So potentially you don't even have to, go to the doctor, for some of this. You can do it remotely, which is really, really cool. So anyway, bioresonance, super duper important. Clearly, if you talk about Fight Club, you're going to get beat down here. But, old Chip will keep doing what old Chip does, and I'll keep talking about it, absolutely. And if it gets me kicked off LinkedIn, well, so what? We'll find another platform to talk about it on. Because this stuff needs to get out and you guys need to know about it. So anyway, we'll leave it there. Love you guys. See you next week for another exciting version of Chip Talks.